I first fell in love with musicals when I was probably about 3 years old, and I saw a film version of musicals. And the first one I remember seeing was The Sound of Music with Julie Andrews. And to this day, it's probably my favorite musical. So I really love that. But in terms of live performance, I fell in love with live performance musicals when I was a little girl. I was living in England with my family, and they used to take us to London to see live shows. And there, they have pantomime in London, and it's really fun. It's meant for children and families. It's really over the top. There's lots of music, and the first pantomime that I went to, I was probably about 8 years old, and it was an over the top version of Snow White, but I loved it. I'd never been to anything like it. Just the energy and enthusiasm and fun was so infectious. I'd never experienced anything like it before, and I remembered really wanting to get up there and do something like that myself when I got older. I could see myself doing what everybody else was doing on stage, and that's when I really remember loving just the glamour of the theater, the whole experience, walking in, the way the theater smelled because it was an old building, and the lights, and it was just incredible to me. It was magic. I think it's so important to go see live theater because the movie experience cannot replace the experience of live theater. I feel like it's not just an audience sitting there watching people doing things on stage. I feel like there's really a connection between the two. The audience is just as much a part of the storytelling as the people on stage. Even if they're not saying a word, just the fact that they're there and the energy that they have, the people on stage can really feel that. So there's definitely a give and take, and you're creating something incredible together. It's really a joint effort. And I just think seeing a movie is fun and it's exciting, but it's nothing like live theater. And it's also storytelling, and whether it's in song or just a play, and a lot of the stories that we are watching on stage are so important for us, and it provides a little bit of escapism too, which we really need right now. Well, I hadn't heard of P3 until I saw the audition notice for Doris Day, and I saw the notice on Backstage, and this was a new theater to me. I hadn't heard of it yet, and I was really fascinated by the audition notice because I have never heard of a musical about Doris Day before, but I was familiar with her and I love her music. And I actually had a friend who was in their production of Steel Magnolias. So I reached out to see what her experience was like, and she had wonderful things to say. She loved working with this company. Everyone was incredibly kind and so professional, and this is a wonderful new up-and-coming theater, and she really encouraged me to go for it, which I did, because for me, the one possible deal breaker for me was the distance, because I don't live in Long Beach. I live further away in Los Angeles, but it's worth the drive. It's been a wonderful experience, and if anybody is on the fence about auditioning for this company, I encourage you, please come audition for P3. It's a wonderful company to work for. Well, Day After Day explores the life of Doris Day from her earliest years, about 16 years old is when we first get a glimpse of her, all the way into her 60s. And she was so active the entire time. And the first half of the show deals mostly with her radio career, Doris Day the singer, because there's Doris Day the singer and Doris Day the movie star. And there's an overlap, but she was very active in both, and she could easily have had a successful career just doing one or just doing the other. So the arc of it is telling a little bit about her life and using the songs that she really sang to help the ebb and flow as we learn a little bit more about her as the story progresses. My creative process when I'm first starting to learn the ins and outs of a new role is I tend to gather as many details as I can. And so in this instance, I am inundated with all kinds of things to see as I learn about Doris Day. So I'm not just building a character from scratch. Doris Day isn't just a character. She was a very real person, a wonderful person. And there's so much footage of her, and thanks to technology, I can just go right onto YouTube and I can watch her interviews and I can watch her movies and listen to her. And I'm still going through so much material of hers. So I'm very fortunate to have so much at my disposal to learn from. But my creative process, I do tend to start slowly. I usually don't come to rehearsals with everything figured out. It's a vulnerable time, so I make a lot of mistakes, and I kind of figure things out bit by bit, and I'm so fortunate that the people who are directing me in the show have actually done this show before. And one of our directors, Christy, has played Doris Day before, so her help and guidance have been invaluable as I'm kind of navigating my way through discovering this character, this real woman. Well, Doris Day is an incredible person, and the more I learn about her, the more I love her, really. I knew a little bit about her before I was cast, kind of what you might read if you looked up the life of Doris Day on Wikipedia, or if you've seen a few movies of hers, which I had. I'd seen a few movies, and I knew some of her songs, but this has been an incredible exploration of what a remarkable person she was. There were a lot of tragedies in her life, a lot of tragedies. Most of us have had our own tragedies in our life, but Doris was remarkable because she was so resilient. She was so courageous, and she never let these challenges keep her down or hold her back, and she didn't live with bitterness and regret. She was very optimistic and very positive, and honestly, learning more about her has really impacted my own life. Her philosophy about life is a lot like her song, Que Sera, Sera, whatever will be, will be. She just kept on keeping on. She was a real survivor and never ever felt sorry for herself for 1 minute. So I've just loved learning more about her, not just about her movies and the facts about her life and the places that she lived and the movie stars that she knew, but about all the things that she overcame and still came to the end of her life with no regrets. Is there a lot of pressure to play Doris Day? Well, I would say absolutely, and there should be, because she's so beloved by so many people who've grown up listening to her singing and watching her movies, and she's got this incredible iconic status, almost goddess-like, for so many people who know and love her so well. So of course there's going to be pressure, and I'm working very hard to even try to do her a little bit of justice, because she was an incredible singer and a wonderful actress. I think she's really been underrated for her acting. She was a wonderful performer, very instinctive, the way she worked, but just amazing energy. And it really, who she was, who Doris was at the very core of her being, came out in her singing, but it also came out on camera. It's something that people felt very connected to, that they could relate to her. They sensed something very real and sincere and loving in her. Doris had a sort of joy about her that was contagious. And the people who knew and loved her said that the person that she was on the camera was the same person that she was in private life. She really was that loving, bubbly, joyous person. Well, I have never done a production like this one before, where I have been on stage so much, where it's pretty much just myself and the other actor for 2 hours. One thing that really helps for me is I have so many changes. So I'm literally in motion the whole time. So when I'm on stage, I'm singing or I'm performing, and then I run off stage and I quickly get changed. And so it's kind of like jumping onto a ride at an amusement park. And then when the ride stops, I'm done. So I don't have time to stop and be worried. It's just kind of one continuous activity. But the other part that makes it great is that I have so much wonderful material to sing and draw from, and every single song tells its own story. So I feel like it's just incredibly exciting to me. It's really pure adrenaline. My wonderful co-star, Zach, is an absolutely incredible person to be on the stage with. He is so sweet and lovely and generous, and he has the most gorgeous voice you could ever hope to hear. And it's just Zach and I for 2 hours on stage, and he's so wonderful to be on stage with. He's so giving, he's so talented, and he's really a lovely and wonderful person. I feel safe every moment I'm on stage with him, and by that I mean if I make a huge mistake and mess up, I am in wonderful hands. He is a fabulous person and a wonderful performer. Our two directors are Christy and Tony. They are a daughter and father, and it's been wonderful getting their feedback while we're doing the show because they've done the show themselves before. This is something that they built over time, and they've played these parts all over. They were touring back on the East Coast, and so they are literally the most amazing encyclopedias of knowledge about the life of Doris Day that you could ever hope to have. So I've had so much help and guidance with all of my questions, and they know all the ins and outs. So they've also been so generous with my co-star Zach and I in not only guiding us along the script and the songs and learning more details about the lives of Doris Day and the people that she knew, but they're also wanting to give us the freedom as well to put our own take on things. So they're not asking us to do the roles exactly the same way that they played them. So they're giving us a lot of freedom and also a lot of support. So they're incredible to work with. They're also very kind and patient and compassionate and professional. So I couldn't ask for a better experience. I do think there's an underlying message in Day After Day. As the audience may learn a little bit more about Doris and parts of her life they may not have known before, I think the underlying message is the song that she sang, Que Sera, Sera. It's probably one of her most well-known songs. Whatever will be, will be. I think the underlying message is that even though so many terrible, horrible tragedies happened in Doris's life, she never let it get her down. And that sense of courage and positive optimism and that sort of uplifting look at life is, I hope, the strongest message that people will come away with, what a survivor Doris was. And she never thought of herself as a movie star. She thought of herself as just an average, ordinary working woman. And if she was a movie star, everybody was a movie star. She just was very humble and very gracious. And I hope that people will get a sense of that. So yes, I think the message of, one of the many messages of this musical is courage and finding joy in life. If something bad happens, sometimes it's just leading to something else wonderful and beautiful and good that's happening in your life. And I think that's influenced me, absolutely. So I hope that's something that people will come away with as well. Well, I would love for the audience to come away singing the songs of Doris Day. Whether someone who comes to see our show is really familiar with Doris and has grown up listening to her music, or maybe they've never heard of her and this is all new, I hope that they'll really come away just simply enjoying the experience, singing the songs, having learned something. Doris, just her as a person, was like a shot of pure vitamin C, like sunshine and a big tall glass of orange juice. And I hope that that's the kind of vitality and energy that the audience will come away feeling when they're done. This is something joyful and uplifting, and goodness knows we could all use a little bit of that right now. I think the Southern California community must come see Day After Day the musical because this is our West Coast premiere. And this is a remarkable show. Nobody's ever done anything like this before out here. And so whether you are familiar with Doris Day and her music or not, this is a wonderful show, and it really harkens back to a time that sometimes we feel a little bit embarrassed by because it seemed so pristine and wholesome and joyful and cheesy sometimes. But there's so much joy in it and a wonderful way to escape for a while into another world. And I hope that everybody who hears about the show will come see it. You won't regret it. It's a really wonderful ride for 2 hours learning about her life.
I first fell in love with theater. I think I was 4 years old. I saw Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Pantages Theater. And I asked my parents to buy the album, and I remember putting it on in the middle of the living room and dancing around and learning all the songs. And I think that's when my parents first knew that this would be something that I would do with my life. And then just I did shows in middle school. My first show was Anything Goes. And then throughout high school, and then I studied it in school, and so college, so I've been singing ever since, really. Theater and musicals are important to see. It exposes people to stories that are different from their own, understanding where other people come from, how other people share information. And for me, it's important. Well, first of all, I love storytelling, becoming another person, figuring out what motivates a character, and then being able to come together with another group of people who've all done their homework and work together to create and to tell a story that someone has found valuable for society. So this is kind of a funny story. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but it's an interesting story for me because I had actually taken a 4.5-year pause from performing, and I was in New York and I was seeing a bunch of shows, and it really inspired me to get back into theater. So I went to the library that day, and I opened up backstage.com, and one of the first postings I saw was for P3 Theater's Evita. And it's a show I've always loved, always wanted to do, and I thought, okay, I'll sign up for an audition. And I auditioned, got cast, and honestly, it's been one of the best things that I could have done for myself at this point in my life. My creative process. Well, I'll for instance, this show, Doris Day is a character or a performer I didn't know much about. So I became familiar with her music. I started listening on YouTube, going through all of her music, found songs that I've always loved but didn't know actually were Doris Day songs. And then watched some of her movie musicals, which, are charming, and kind of get a sense of what the time is like, how they're approaching the characters, because it is a different set in the 50s, 60s. It's a different style of acting and leading men, different type of performances. So for me, I really studied that, and then try to add my own take on things. And as we rehearse, you get feedback from directors, from your fellow castmates, and so it all really informs how the show comes together. The main story arc of Day After Day, it's about the music and life of Doris Day, and we start from her discovery with Barney Rapp to joining Les Brown's big band, and then her move into a solo career and movies, and you kind of chart the progression of her career. And my role, I play the narrator, which is, he tells her story, but it's also telling the story of the writer of the show, Tony Santamauro. It's really his character and the way he perceives and his relationship with Doris. So there are moments where the two of them come together as Tony and Doris, and they're reminiscing about her movies and songs in this great movie medley. So it's kind of got a bit of everything. It's storytelling, it's music, it's imaginary relationships of two people coming together. So I play the narrator / the man. So I kind of move the story along with a lot of recounting of various aspects of Doris Day's life, but I also play various men in her life. So I play Barney Rapp, who is essentially the band leader who discovered Doris, and then I play Les Brown, where she came into her own, into major success with songs like Sentimental Journey, and then there's like a cameo with a music producer, Mitch Miller, which is fun. Look forward to that. And so, but mostly it's as the narrator moving the story forward. There is a lot of pressure, I think, mostly on the Doris, because she's, portraying a character that everyone loves and adores and knows so much about. For me, I have a little bit more freedom to be myself, and because I'm essentially playing a fan who's in love with her, adores her work. So it's a little less pressure on me. The pressure comes in that it's a 2-person show, and there's an incredible amount of material to get through for 2 people. We're on stage for about 2 hours. That's a big challenge. My co-star, Deborah. What can you say? She is actually truly phenomenal. I don't know how they found her. I can't imagine anyone else playing this role at this point in time. She sounds like Doris. She looks like Doris. She has her characteristics. It's truly wonderful, and she is a very, very wonderful co-star and person. The 2 directors. So this is an unusual and rare circumstance where you actually get to work with 2 people who wrote the story and originated the 2 roles of the show. So it's been a fantastic learning opportunity to work with people who've already been who've gone through this experience. They've been so insightful. They know so much about Doris, and they both are such fans. And to work with people who are as passionate as they are is really lucky. And the music director, he's been along for the ride as well. They've done this show for 20 years, and so it's great. It's a really unique experience to work with people who understand the material as in depth depth as they do. So yeah, we've been really lucky. What I want the audience to get out of Day After Day, I want them to have a great time. I want them to I want them to be reminded of their experience watching Doris firsthand, throughout her career. Songs that they love to listen to, parts of movies, scenes. I want them to have a great time, to relive their experience with Doris, and I want them to leave feeling like they've gone through an interesting ride of her life. If you're a fan of Doris Day, this is why you have to come see our show. We have about 53 of her songs, back to back, interspliced with scenes from her life, from her movies, stories that you may not be aware of. We go in and take an in-depth look at her life and music, and it's truly fun, it's fast-paced, and you will walk out of here singing Que Sera, Sera, if nothing else. I think the Southern California community must come to our show Day After Day, because this is a story that isn't often told. We mentioned that Doris Day, while she had this incredible career, not many people talk about it or tell her story. And this is a fantastic rendition where you have interesting facts about her life, about her career, filled with, I think it's like 53 songs from her book. It's just jam-packed with like amazing Doris Day facts and music, and it's fun. I think we do a really good job having fun, and I think you will have a fun time with us. John has created something in Long Beach. What he's done is phenomenal. With the mission of bringing theater to the masses, to people who can't necessarily afford to drive into LA, or to be able to have a local community theater where he can hire actors who don't always have the opportunity. It's a tough business from the performer's side. So the more theaters, the better, more opportunities we have. And for me personally, he brought me back into performing by establishing P3. It brought me back with the opportunity to do Evita. So I'm in debt to John. I think he's done an amazing thing here for the community, and I think we're all pretty lucky for that. I'm grateful.